start wondering, why are these things happening to me? How do I overcome these things? Is there a way out? And is there a way out of that? Means a solution that is more sustainable than if you meet somebody, an angry person, rather than confronting, you just avoid that angry person. But that's a quick sort of, a band-aid treatment. So when you begin to reflect and see that there are problems that will never end, there are always new problems that come up. Today, a problem may be solved, tomorrow another one comes up, and depends on how easily we are able to do this. So, I'm fortunate to be in my own surrounding where there are solutions through Buddhist practices that have helped me a lot. And in my own way, over several decades that I've been practicing, initially, uh, for me, transformation initially meant that I would focus more out of my own selfish needs and to focus more on benefiting other people. That seemed to work actually, because I was moving out of my I me mind circle and spending more time uh, to help other people because I was in a hospital setup. It was quite kind of all laid out for me. But then later on, as time passed, I realized that this alone was not sufficient. There are a lot of people around the world doing this sort of work, humanitarian work, benefiting other people. And there are people who neglect themselves and who hurt themselves because they haven't taken care of themselves, as well as people who have the problem of burnout, which I think the two, Radhule, Michael, we've talked about also a number of times. So what I discovered myself was that helping others, benefiting others, was a transformation that was important but was not enough, basically. We needed to go a little further than that. And this further transformation was for myself to try and discover what is the root of this, all these problems. Why does it happen? Why do I get upset? Why do I get unhappy? Why do I get depressed? Or why do I get aggressive or whatever? So these are mind states that are disturbing mind states, disturbed mind states. If you look at ourselves every day and try to think, when do I get upset? What upsets me? You know, or what puts me off my mood? I was quite calm and happy, and then suddenly something happened, and I'm all of a sudden disturbed state. So these are situations that I kind of look at to see, well, some transformation is required for me to try and be more peaceful and calm throughout the day as long as possible. So there's a lot of self-discovery involved in this. Shall I just leave it at that for the time being before other people might say something? This is my own personal experience, basically.
Thank you, Tsaitan. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Morning, Juliet.
And morning, Juliet, and welcome. So, Juliet, just to let you know, since you're just joining us, we're kind of doing joined with Dr. Tsaitan here, and we're doing it in a slightly different way this morning, where we're going to take some questions, and Dr. Tsaitan has just spoken to the first question, which was, how can we transform ourselves so we can be of benefit to others? And then we just want to open up that question to everybody here and kind of invite people into a conversation. So
okay. I apologize for being late. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
No worries. Well, let's just unmute everybody, or you can unmute yourselves if you're still muted, and just invite anybody who likes, please come in.
Well, I was following what you were saying, Dr. Sutton, very closely, and I find myself being in kind of the same same boat, trying to look at what upsets me and then what to do about it. And I'm curious about what you found to be helpful.
Okay. Maybe somebody else wants to say something else.
Actually,
Oh no, Winnie, you had your hand up.
Okay. For me, I also wonder about it, of course, and I think when that happens to me, I have to notice my awareness has kind of left me, and I have and then I bring myself down into a chair, and I sit for a minute or 5 minutes, so I can recenter, because I feel like these mini meditation throughout the day bring me back to the center that is not so based on ego. If I get upset, it's often just nonsense, and if it's nonsense, it might be just, sometimes even I might have not had lunch or something silly, and I have to determine what is the problem here. I have to analyze it for a few moments. I have to sit, recenter, focus on my breath, things like that. Yeah, that's still, I always analyze it. I kind of at the end of the day try to find out, is there a better way that I can handle it next time? Yeah.
Thanks, Renee.
I find that my tendency is to feel a sense of collapse or dissociation when I get upset, and so for me, you know, those practices of coming back to be grounded, you know, on the earth, because I can literally feel a floating kind of experience mixed with a sort of collapse. So so the grounding, and then mixed with really just expanding my sense of perception, so that I'm realizing that my consciousness is part of a much larger consciousness, but I have to really be in and of this earth. I have to be in my body. And that's a lifelong, this is a lifelong work for me, because I've done this since I was a child. So I think the practice is then, and then recognizing to get out of my own self and know that what I'm doing, whatever I'm doing, is for everybody. It's not just for me. If I'm working on this moment with myself, this is a moment. This is a moment for everyone. It will improve the energy field, if you will. Yeah.
Thanks, Juliet.
Just a minute.
Hospital emergency?
No, suddenly my whole thing went out.
We
Just a
didn't
minute,
see
I
you
don't know
very
why.
clearly.
Just a minute. I'm not too sure what's going on, but
We
oh
can
gosh,
see and hear
it's
you.
asking me to. Can you see me?
Yes, hear you.
We can see you and hear you. Yeah, we can see you and
Okay, your whole screen suddenly disappeared. You know, so there was a phone call that just suddenly came in, and as if that kind
you
of signaled.
what
William is a computer engineer, so do you have
Just 1 sec. Okay, back. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, good.
Okay. I managed to figure it out. Okay. Yeah. So do we have somebody else now?
anybody else like to come in on that? Did you want to say something, or?
Yeah, I could. I think all the above, I think coming back to the body really helps. And kind of over years of practice, it feels like, I remember when I first went to therapy at age 22, and my therapist would ask me, what do you feel? And I would always say, I think. I just was totally cut off from my body. I remember that. It took me the longest time to actually land in my body. So I can very much identify with this. But I think over the years, I actually feel it very strongly. You know, it's like sometimes too much in the heart. You know, it's like, oh, it's like very prominent now. But sometimes, besides little moments during the day, it helps me really to have my time in the morning. And like I just shared before everybody came that these days I realize the world thing is really kind of getting to me. I've realized I'm getting a little addicted to news, and you know, it's just really kind of coloring my feelings. And then to just kind of come back and practice to notice thoughts, they're just flooding by energy. and feelings are just these clouds, you know. So actually that's for later a question I have, how to hold this more what we can feel in practice reality and the daily news and whatever is happening. How can we hold this at the same time? So that's something I ask myself. But it helps me to know that there are different facets to perception of what's real. But it's a struggle at times.
You know,
and Leslie wanted to say something.
Leslie, please. Yeah.
So sometimes when I spin and I have this feeling of kind of out of control, I find if I set an intention for at least the moment, if not the next 4 hours. So something like clarity or peace or calmness, at least it helps me for a duration of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of refocusing. What am I trying to do here?
An intention.
Yeah, an intention.
An intention, right.
Great.
Thank you, Leslie. You know, our second question was, can you tell us about a practice that sustains you in this difficult time? Can you tell us about a practice that sustains you in this difficult time? And what I wanted to add to that question, Setan, is, if I could, just picking up on what you said earlier about how your initial approach to transformation was really to focus on service and altruism. And then, you know, you realize that took you so far, but it wasn't enough. And so you sort of shifted the focus inwards to inquiry and to inner practice. And the kind of the additional piece I wanted to add to this question about, you know, if you were able to share with us a particular practice that sustains you in this time, is, you know, thinking in terms of inner transformation, and just thinking of our different cultural contexts, you know, that you are embedded in a community, a Tibetan community within an Indian town and village, and kind of a deep tradition of
faith.
Well, I was going to say of others before self, of a philosophy of interdependence that underpins it all, but that also comes into everyday life in so many ways. You know, so inner inquiry in that cultural context is very different, I think, in some ways, to inner inquiry and inner practice in our Western culture, which is so much a culture of I, me, mine and individualism. So so kind of moving away from service to inner practice in a culture of I, me, mine has the danger of people, you know, just getting lost in their own journey. And, you know, so I don't quite know how that translates into a question, but I think there's that cultural difference. It takes on a different resonance. But maybe coming back to the question of, you know, within that, are you able to share with us a practice that sustains you in this difficult time?
Well, having heard from what the other two of the participants just talked about, and how they themselves would try to avert situations, difficult situations or disturbing situations. And I can't recall the name, but I don't know if it's Leslie, the first one who talked, that she would try to analyze, you know, Laura, with analyzing what might have caused this disturbed state of mind. That's the sort of situation that I had begun exploring. And I think it's kind of important for me, I found that it was useful to kind of see, why did this thing, why was I upset? What caused this upset, you know? And exploring that, I discovered that a lot of this, uh, you know, uneasy state of mind or disturbed state of mind was much to do with my own perception, you know. And I was upset with something which somebody wasn't upset about. And it kind of made me realize that this is, in a way, my way of viewing things outside. And it then, as I explored more and more, and as another one of the participants just now said, there wasn't really much reason for being too upset about it, you know. It was the way I made it out to be. In other words, my own projection, basically. So I can project things in many, many different ways, basically. These sort of projections are exaggerated ways that we tend to look at things, or ways in which we tend to imagine ourselves to be, you know. So I think that it requires some sort of analysis and exploration to say, you know, suppose you enter your house one day and one of your family members has, you know, put things in a certain way which you are not used to having put, you know, some utensils or some, you know, furniture or something, and you get upset, you know, because you are fixated in a way that that's the way you want it, and you have not considered the way the other person might have thought about it. So we need to really try to explore why are we, you know, so upset about these things. A lot of these things I discovered why I was upset was, as I said, my mind was playing tricks with me, that I was imagining things where it need not have been thought that way at all, you know. Or it's like an examination, you know, before the examination, you're very well prepared, but you are so scared of what the results might be. The results have never turned up, but you have all sorts of imagination, you know. So, in other words, we are imagining a future that none of us can predict. Of course, you may have studied very hard, and still, even if you've studied hard and you're a very good student, yet you still are fearful that you will not make it. You know, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that our mind is always playing a lot of tricks, that we are always there exaggerating things, imagining things. So that's where this mindfulness comes again, trying to be in the present moment. It's very important, I think, that we are always trying to place our mind back, as somebody said, you know, trying to center the mind back again into the present, you know. And this present state of mind also, which is very useful for me also, trying to look at it in a more realistic way. Realistic means by reason, trying to reason it out, you know. there always should be some sort of a reason behind saying this is like this. Why should it be like this? And I think it needs a lot of going over again, trying to analyze the situation. Now, by analysis, what it taught me was that I was moving towards a more realistic situation. That's what it boiled down to, basically. It was trying to tell me, is this a real reality or is it not? What is real? You know, that reality could only come through uh, doubt, questioning, and then trying to explore, basically. So that I think is something that has helped me, rather than just letting my imagination just go completely, given a free hand. And a lot of this imagination and exaggeration has a lot to do with I, me, and mine, basically. If I don't like somebody, it's not because others like the person or not. It's more about me not liking somebody, or me not liking things done in a certain way, me not liking somebody, not liking something I see or something that I have. It's got a lot to do with me. So I think that some exploration is required as to why do I feel like this, this questioning mind. Therefore, mindfulness alone is insufficient. Mindfulness helps one to be in a state of awareness. We have different types of awareness. Mindfulness, we have, mindfulness of the body. We have mindfulness of the speech. We have mindfulness of the feeling. There's so many different aspects of mindfulness that's required in Buddhist practice. But essentially, it's trying to be in a state of awareness where you're trying to see, you're not totally, in other words, totally subjective. You are trying to be more objective with yourself. So in the same way that you observe things and you tend to see things in a different way rather than the usual way, that you tend to not see things outside as if they'll never change. For instance, you look at the dog that Radhule is, holding onto her lap, and you watch that day, see the dog every day, and tomorrow when you see the same dog, you think, well, it's the same dog I saw yesterday, but it's not. That dog has transformed too. So there are many forms of transformation. Some are at very subtle levels, and some are at coarse levels. So I think that sort of mind state where we are trying to explore within ourselves, why is that happening? I think that questioning is important.
Thank you, Chetan. Well, the discussion continues. I'm on call, and I'm afraid I have to make a call, but I will be right back. Will you?
Okay.
Sure.
Michael and Dr. Zetan are on call, so
Yeah.
the world coming in. So who would like to maybe add something to this or question? And I find that very helpful. I can sometimes get really caught up in my projections, especially when I feel somebody doesn't like me or somebody excludes me or whatever, my pet complaints. And then sometimes it's really hard to know what is what, what is really, what is real, what is a real concern that needs to be attended to, and what is just so colored by my own by my own mind. And I was wondering what others do about that, how to figure that out. Yeah, Laura.
Yeah, I've been working with this myself more intensely lately, I guess. Trying to watch my mind, and my vulnerability seems to be fear. You know, I'm often afraid of making the wrong decision that affects another person, or not knowing enough, or those sorts of things. And what I've been experimenting with, I guess, or trying to remember to do, is to notice when that's coming up and think about my motivation. Am I approaching what I'm wanting to do with out of fear or out of love? And when I can make that switch, if I can remember that my motivation is love, then the fear calms down quite a bit. But it's a practice. I'm not super good at it yet, but I'm working on it, and I'm hoping that I can get better with that. And that, hopefully that also means that if I'm less fearful, that when I do have to make decisions or whatever, they're going to be better coming out of that calmer, loving place than out of fear.
I just want to make a comment on that because it's a very important area I think Laura has touched on, and that is fear and love. In Buddhist practice, there are certain mind states that are negative, and they are negative because they are momentary, they are invalid. They don't stand the test of time. They have no rationale behind it. Also, they seem realistic, but they are not. On the other hand, there are positive states of mind, like the negative, what she mentioned was fear. That's one of the negative states of mind.
Yeah.
Love is a positive state of mind. That's a valid state of mind. It can withstand reason, is stable, and one would cancel out the other, obviously. These are the loving state of mind is not even really an emotion. It's actually a state of mind that that is innately present in every human being. It's just that it actually it's been dormant, hasn't been cultivated. So when the loving state takes over the fear, obviously the fear factor will get demolished or get weakened, and the positive states of mind can just be increased, endlessly. However, as I said, fear is momentary, it's always changing, it can go back and forth, and after a certain time, it has its own limit. There is no unlimited mind state like love. So, because in our natural state, because we have love as an innate state of mind, we tend to feel much better. We feel good about it. But fear, being a state of mind which is unnatural for us, puts us in a difficult situation. So I think that recognition is a very important step that Laura has achieved. It's a very, very important state, I think, of mind, basically. Now, this fear factor also has a lot to do with the I, me, and mine. So then it boils down to what somebody has mentioned about the ego of the me and I. So I'll just leave it here because that is another subject altogether about how to recognize what this I and what my own experience of the I. And because your society also highly individualistic society, highly individualistic, so that actually in a way further facilitates fear. Another disadvantage. Okay.
I have a question about the love, and I have to say that's something that really has come to me more through Tibetan Buddhism than the mindfulness practice I had done before, which is that awareness isn't just a mindful awareing in the moment, but it's it's a state that is a priori there, and that this state that's a priori there has the qualities of love and compassion and awareness. And I was just wondering, because sometimes in our Western mindfulness practice, which is mainly Theravada, I think, we don't hear so much about this and how to kind of link back into the state of awareness and love that is kind of like a field state that's already there. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit about this.
So, Radu, can you put your question in another way again on this love issue?
Yeah. So when you say that love is a priori there, it's originally there. That is kind of, for many of us in the West, like a leap of faith. You know, because I remember when I first came to this monastery in Sri Lanka at age 22, I came right from Germany, from Europe, after World War II, you know, kind of. And I thought, well, maybe when I sit down there is original terror. You know, I didn't know what would happen when I sit down. You know, I thought maybe there's original chaos and nihilism and terror. And actually, I was quite surprised that when I sat and sat and sat, that there was more peace and more a sense of knowing and of love. And I think that in Tibetan Buddhism, they're actually very good describing this. So I was just, does that
No,
make
I think that I think that we all need to recognize that we have a basic goodness inside us. This is the key thing, I think, you know. Many people look down on themselves and they're discouraged. They think, oh, I can't do it. I can't make it. You know, how can I be a good person? How can I do things better? I think that we need to understand that we have tremendous potential inside, and we have an innate basic goodness which just needs cultivation, basically, you know. It's lying there, you know. And what's trying to prevent this from growing essentially are just only two things. One is selfishness, and one is the inability to perceive the reality of things. So these are two things that are just smothering us down. So the antidote of selfishness is to get out of this individualistic state and become more altruistic. The way to get out of seeing things in an illusory state is to analyze, essentially, to use our own intelligence every day rather than just going by faith and saying, oh, Buddhism is very good, I must do mindfulness. That's not enough, you know. We have to use our intelligence to always ask why, why, why? Why am I like this? Why am I thinking like this? Why am I upset? Why am I feeling better with thinking of love instead of fear? We have to question ourselves many, many times, because by questioning ourselves through conviction that, oh, this is it, and this is making me feel better, through your own reasoning and your own experience, gives stability, and that sustains, you know. If you don't have reasoning and analysis, then you become like like something swaying in the wind, you know. At one time somebody comes and says, oh, this is not the way, you've got it all wrong, and suddenly say, oh, I didn't know I was in the wrong all the time, because you had uh, done whatever you had to do. Your experience was not well researched, not well analyzed, you know. So in that way, I think this belief that there is an innate goodness inside us, a basic goodness that can be cultivated endlessly, you know, provides a great deal of hope in us. As Buddhists, we would say a Buddha nature, a very pure Buddha nature is inside us, inside everybody, you know, and that gives a lot of hope, a tremendous amount of hope. Of course, because we believe in rebirth, so it goes on for, you know, lives to lives to lives, and there's always hope to do, to be in much higher states of realization, even if you don't make it in this lifetime, you know. So I think that's the way that's the way I think about it. Yeah.
Could I just ask a question following on from that, Setan? Um, our innate Buddha nature and the obstacles being our misperception on the one hand and selfishness on the other, and so the antidotes being um, others before self and service on the one hand, and analysis and thinking and really understanding to come to clear perception on the other. But can you speak to, are there other practices that can also, help us awaken, realize our innate goodness, our Buddha nature,
And sense of knowing.
and sense of knowing? Yeah. Are there other practices that you have found helpful, besides the two roads you talked about of service and inquiry? Can you speak to that?
Well, one of the things that is absolutely crucial in doing these two things, particularly the altruistic part, is what is my relationship to others? Others will include either my near dear ones, or my colleagues, or people I don't even know, who are strangers, And then maybe a third group of people who are people I don't like. What's my relationship with these people? I think that cultivating a sense where people are no more strangers to us, they're another human being just like us. When I saw that video clip shot in the UK recently, when there were, skinheads who were, I think, almost going to have a battle with people who were protesting for George Floyd. And then, as the two groups were about to clash, one of the skinhead white man fell down and was left behind to be ravaged by the protesters, for George Floyd. And a black man walks out with his group. They protect this white guy. He carries him on his shoulder and he takes him away from. I mean, when I heard this interview, the interviewer asked him, "Why did you do this?" And you know what he said? He said, "I did this because he's another human being like me. I didn't want him to get hurt." So I think he answered a very basic question of how somebody, he just walks out of a crowd. I wouldn't say, I don't even know if he's a Dharma practitioner, what he is, but he was a person with his basic goodness inside, and he had the courage to come out and protect this guy, who was all out to probably attack the other colored, protesters, So it just showed that there are people whose basic goodness just suddenly showed up when they had the courage to protect this guy who otherwise, probably, imagine what that skinhead must be thinking about all the blacks. He would never have ever imagined in his life that his life was saved by this guy.
That's
So
great.
it was out of the normal. What I'm trying to say is out of the normal. Many things we do, we say it's normal for whites to hate blacks or blacks to hate whites. That's the normal. Now we're trying to reverse that and try and say, what is normal? What has society made normal? His Holiness the other day, just yesterday, I think, on the Mind and Life dialogue said, well, this racial thing, if you make it very, very important, it becomes more and more obvious in a way, There is a difference between blacks and whites, So in a way, giving importance in the right way is very important. Otherwise, it can get worse, basically, That, say in Dharamsala where I'm here, And nobody talks of blacks and whites here. Nobody even thinks about these things. But in a society where this is like real, and suddenly you start saying, "Oh, this is black and this is white," you start looking at things in a way that they were so different. These are blacks. And I'll give you this example. What my experience was when I was in the UK for a couple of years, when in my study group, amongst the students who were with me, there were Pakistanis and there were Indians. Now, me being from India, there is such a strong anti-Pakistan feeling that when I first saw the first Pakistani, I said, "Oh, these people just look like Indians. They're not different from Indians." I thought Pakistan means they must be looking very different from Indians, something very evil and black out there. And there we were in the same class, Indians and Pakistanis all together, quite happy with each other. In fact, they spoke the same language. So what a perception of how you see people like that. So, I mean, so illusory, so illusory. So that's why I'm saying we must question, always have to question. Why am I looking? You see a beautiful flower, you say, "Oh, so beautiful," but does everybody see it beautiful? I'm sure not. Somebody will say, "Oh, it's okay, it's quite okay." Somebody will say, "Very beautiful." So a lot depends on our own perception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we have to question our perception, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of, again, inquiry and analysis is required, I think. Yeah.
You say that.
Are there?
Yeah, we have 5 minutes or so left in our conversation. Please, let's invite anybody, please, who would like to come in and add to the conversation.
Well, I think you touched upon relationship and how our practices really show up in relationship, especially when conflict emerges and maybe someone's very rude or even uses violent words against us. How do we respond? Do we react immediately and do the same, or do we do what you're saying and stop and think and say, okay, why is this happening, and why am I having this response, and can I respond with love, and at the same time a strength of as we would care for a child, we might care for ourselves in that as well, so that the violence doesn't actually harm. So how do we respond so we're not harming the other, and we're also allowing ourselves to be present to a different way of responding that that will not harm another back, even if they're in a place of harming us. So just recent example, when someone can be very rude and condescending, and the immediate response is one of how dare you, or it brings shame, it can be both. So then the opportunity then that I feel these practices of focusing on love and analyzation at the same time help us then to respond in a different way and recognize that that person is suffering, and that there's some middle way between completely being a dish rag to it and being strong but steady and coming back to the place of love and responding in a different way. And I've noticed that people will shift and find a softer place in themselves if they are responded to in that way. And it alleviates some of the suffering of having been insulted and all of that. So the relationship, I think, this is where the key is. Isn't it?
Yeah, I had this image when I was, I think a few weekends ago, we were joining demonstrations in Santa Barbara for Black Lives Matter, and I noticed many people went with their fists up. And then I thought, well, maybe we should all go down the street like this with our hands out, just kind of replace the fists with the hands out and walk like that down the street. So I started doing this, but I don't know.
That's nice. It made me think of the man who carried the skinhead. I saw another interview with him where he said, I did this for my kids and my grandkids also. I did this for my children and my grandchildren. I could have responded in a different way, and I know I would have been blamed. All of us would have been blamed. That would have an impact on me, on my children, on my grandchildren, on this whole line of people. And so he came from a place of love and the the rational place of this is the right thing to do. This is just the right thing to do. And that beautiful image of him, he just, it's heartbreak. It just brings tears to my eyes, seeing him carrying that man with such a sense of presence. And
Can you send that link to me?
yeah, it was a week or so ago. I'll try to find it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amazing. That was amazing. Yeah. It showed his strength I think you put it so beautifully in the sense that it showed not only just love, but it showed he was using his intelligence and his common sense that guided him, irrespective of what other people would feel or say, because this guy was the enemy. The skinhead was the enemy of the blacks, and he took his enemy and took him to safety. This man actually is at a very high level of realization of this relationship. So in a situation where one has to face difficult situation where people can be very negative, how we respond depends on many factors, particularly on what sort of a person are you. Are you an angry person? Are you a calm person? Are you a practitioner of mindfulness? There's so many factors. The person who is the angry non-practitioner, the best way is he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. That's sort of analog where you just avoid that situation. Many of us, it's very difficult not to react right away. Actually, those of us who are practitioners would try to just wait for a moment after that reaction and in a split second be able to say, can I respond to this in a more restrained way, even if it's not in a loving way, even a little bit of a restraint. So there is a pause between action and reaction. I think this is very important. So there are different levels and stages at which we can react to these things. So those of us who are practitioners must put a pause there to, not react immediately, and then look at the person who is behaving in such a negative towards you as something not as hateful or as an enemy, but looking at that other person just like yourself. Okay. I think there are many steps to go further. It's very hard to look at him in a loving way, or her, or him, or whoever that person is. But I think we must move in steps where we have to give ourselves time to just look at that in a less hateful way. That all boils down again to the I, me, and mine situation, basically.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Seitan, and thank you everybody for joining us. And
yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you for setting it up, Michael
you.
and Radhule. Yeah.
And
thank you very much.
we hope to come together again in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a nice day. Have a nice day, all of you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Have a good night's sleep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sepal, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you, Radhule and Michael, too.
Thanks, Juliet. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Satan.
That was nice.
No?